to you, Sarah, for you to kind of open the subject. And we are all super eager and so glad that you found us. And thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me and for PMD Alliance for hosting this. I think it's going to be a really fun discussion that we can get into. So I do want to start out by saying, bear with me. I'm going to do a little presentation to give us some guidance about what we're here to talk about. And then I definitely want to open things up to discuss and hear from all of you and hear about your experiences and your concerns or how we can get the help that you're looking for with your dog especially. So I do have a little presentation prepared to that effect. I do see that we have in the chat a message from Ken. Thank you. So the letters after my name stand for Certified Professional Dog Trainer, Knowledge Assessed. I am a board certified trainer and I've been a trainer for over 12 years now and I've gotten the pleasure of working with a variety of species. So I'm really excited to bring this presentation to you today. So if you don't mind holding the questions off, feel free to type them into the chat, but I will definitely address them after the presentation. I want to try to really get through that so that we have something to focus on at the end. So without further ado, let me share my screen with you guys. Might take me just a moment. Here we go. Okay, I hope you all can see that okay? Excellent. Then, just to conserve a little bit of bandwidth here, I am actually going to just stop my video for a little while because I want to share some other videos with you throughout this presentation, and then I will definitely turn it back on at the end. So you'll be able to hear me, but you may not be able to see me for a short while, but I promise I'm still here with you. Okay. Let's get this up and going. So like Andrea said, I know that you guys had a previous presentation about service dogs, so I don't want to touch on that for too long, but we do need sort of a common understanding of what a service dog is for the foundation of what we're going to be talking about. So I want to just briefly go back and review that for maybe some of you that weren't there for that webinar. Service dogs are specially trained to perform behaviors that assist a person with a documented disability. They are temperament tested and trained to perform both obedience and specialty behaviors in public and high intensity environments. So it's really important that it's the perfect combination of temperament, obedience training, ability to perform and be well-mannered in public, and be specially trained as well. Because of all these aspects, they are permitted to go anywhere humans can go under the Americans with Disabilities Act. They are legally classified as medically necessary equipment. But despite common belief, there's actually no governing or regulatory bodies, and there's no formal certification or accreditation for service dogs. So it's really easy to go online and find websites that say, pay me $25 and your dog will be a service dog. But I want to be really clear that that isn't realistic, and it definitely doesn't follow the law. So we want to be really careful and look at all the things that make a service dog. Now that all leads back to the feedback that I was hearing, and I hear this all the time when I'm working with clients that want to train their own service dogs, that are looking for service dogs, or when I do presentations on service dogs, I hear a lot of things. So it's not just what I was hearing in the webinar that I saw from you guys. I want to make sure that you know that this is really universal. I hear these frustrations all the time. So this presentation is not going to be focused on service dogs. I want to focus on some of those frustrations. That service dogs are expensive. They require a high level of commitment. On average, they take 1 to 2 years to train, so there's a long wait list for trained service dogs. Or if you train your own dog, it might be a long time before you're able to take that dog out in public and call them a service dog. I know that many worry that they might not qualify for a service dog. Maybe you feel like you're not disabled enough to get a service dog, and that is not fair to anyone to feel that way. Or maybe you have dogs and you don't want to add another dog to your household. You've already got 2. You can't imagine taking another golden retriever home. It's another mouth to feed. That's a lot to take on as well. Or maybe your pets that you have are incapable of becoming service dogs. They would have to put in a lot of manners training and you're just not up for that. Or there's no easy access to a trainer in your area. These are definitely common things that I hear all of the time. And all of this can absolutely create the feeling that benefiting from a service dog is an unattainable goal, but it doesn't have to be. Your pet dogs can actually learn to perform behaviors that provide support at home. But I'm aware that these resources about how to teach your dog assistance behaviors are not widely available, and that's what I really want to focus on today. So some examples of support behaviors that you could have your dog learn at home, and I want to keep in mind that there are so many and they all vary based on what sort of experience you're looking for, but just a couple of examples are opening and closing doors, turning lights on and off, picking up, retrieving, carrying, or holding objects, mobility stabilization and assistance, getting help, anxiety interruption and support, routine reminders like taking medication on time, guiding around obstacles, maybe at night when the vision is a little bit hard to see because it's dark in a room, how to get past things safely. And there are hundreds more skills that can be taught that span physical, mental, and emotional health. And there are many more that we can create as well. There are, of course, some limiting factors when we're trying to teach pets these behaviors, though. We have to think about size. So for example, a Pomeranian probably wouldn't be a really good choice for mobility support because they can't brace against our weight. That wouldn't be fair to them. We have to look at health as well. So asking a dog that has teeth or dental problems to retrieve or hold heavy objects with their mouth probably is not a great idea either. So we want to be really cognizant of your pet's experience throughout this as well. And aversions. If you have a dog that is afraid of noises, for example, we don't want to teach them to go over and push the buttons on the laundry machine and have it start a really loud noise. That wouldn't be a pleasant experience for them. So we want to make sure that we're also keeping your pet's experience in mind to make this a pleasant relationship building activity for both of you. Now that all said, because this can feel unattainable, because this can feel really overwhelming, I actually want to provide you with a skill that you can teach your dogs when we're done here today. So looking at service dog training is a little bit different than obedience training. What we actually do is we try to focus on concepts that can be applied in many different scenarios. So for example, targeting is a concept that involves teaching an animal to touch an object with a part of their body and apply a range of pressures needed to interact with that object. So the most common example that you've probably seen of this is teaching your dog to give paw. They're learning to target their paw to your hand. And that skill, that concept, can be translated to other behaviors like pushing buttons, flipping light switches, other things that they can interact with their paw. So I want to start by teaching you something that hopefully your dogs don't know, so that you're really being able to experience this from the beginning of introduction, which is a nose target, teaching your dog to use their nose to interact with objects and using that skill to translate that to shutting doors or drawers. So I actually want to give you a video tutorial. It's about 12 minutes long, but it really covers how to teach this from beginning to end with the objects that you probably have already lying around your house. I want you to see how easy this can be and fun and engaging for your pet. So I'm going to go ahead and share that video with you now. Let me just do really quickly. I want to optimize for the video clip. Okay, then we'll go back to this. Okay, here we go. What has happened? To teach targeting, we need a couple of things available to us. We have to motivate the dogs to learn something unnatural. So treats are going to be the easiest way to do that. They're universally motivating and they're very easy to control. So the treats that I have right now is something that I usually keep in my fridge or in my freezer. It's one hot dog. It's cut into very small pieces. When we're using training treats, we want to have them typically no larger than our smallest fingernail. Ideally, for very small dogs, it's a quarter of that size. For mid-range dogs, maybe a half of that size. For mine, because he needs to actually gain a little bit of weight, I do have larger treats. So we can keep them pretty small because our goal is not to fill our dogs up, but it is to provide them with a taste of something good so that they're motivated to do it again and again and again. So we want to make sure that our treats are very small, and we want to have them in a container that has a big opening so they're very easy to take and deliver to the dog. And that it's somewhere contained. So the way that I like to sit with these things is I like to put my treats between my legs when I'm sitting so that they are protected from the dog trying to come in and steal them. And they're also secured. I'm not going to knock them around or accidentally reinforce anything. So I put them right down there. You can put them in a cup holder or anywhere else. You can put them in a pocket. There are some really amazing belted treat bags on the market. They're a great way to keep them next to you and safe without worrying about spilling or losing the container as well. The other thing that we're going to need is a target stick. We need a way to encourage the dog to touch an object that we can handle and move around, and we want to eventually translate that to other objects as well. So something that you may have just lying around would be like a big cooking spoon. This is ideal because it has a nice slender stick part, and then it's got a big space that the dog can target and touch with their nose. So this is really a great object to get started with, but if we're trying to move really efficiently through the process, the best thing that we can do is have a stick-type material, which could be a spoon, it could be a ruler, it could be a stick found in your yard, really anything that we want to attach a separate object to, so that later we can take this object and attach it to the door or attach it to a cabinet to help the dog to generalize the skill to a new context. So what I'm going to be using today is just a little plastic stick that I had lying around and a separately colored measuring cup. This just helps the dog to identify which part to touch, and I have it just masking taped to this stick so that it's able to become an extension of my arm, and I can move it around to varying locations as the dog gets good at this skill. So I'm going to just remove this, put it over there, call my dog over, and we're going to get started teaching targeting. You want to work? Come here. I got hot dogs. Get it. Good. So to get started with targeting, we want to introduce the object really close to the dog so that they look at it and they're investigating it. Hey, you want to work? So I'm going to stick this down. Yes. Now when he goes to sniff it, I'm using the word yes to punctuate the moment in time in which he's done something that I like and that I then took a treat and just tossed on the floor for him. So I'm starting really close to his face so that he is tempted to go, oh, that's new, what is that, and investigate it. So he's sniffing towards it, which is a step in the right direction. I punctuate that moment with a yes, and I toss a treat onto the floor for him to get. That's it. And then as he gets comfortable with us, hi, we're still working, come here. I'm going to move it further. Now this is an object he hasn't encountered before, so this is new. I'm just going to put it down. Yes, good boy. Get my treat, put it on the ground. Hey, buddy. Yes, good job. And now as he's getting confident that the behavior that I'm looking for, and the reason I'm tossing hot dogs on the ground, is that he puts his nose against this, I'm going to wait until I see contact, that he's really touching it. He's not just air sniffing around it. Nice burp. Ready? Yes, good job. So I waited until he actually pushed his nose against it, which for more timid dogs, that's going to come a little later. It may not happen so quickly. So just keep presenting it and rewarding them for their effort until they become confident with the object. Hi, come back over here. Good job. Yes. Now at no point am I bringing the target to his nose, because in a real situation, if we're asking the dogs to take this skill and put it into something like closing a door, the door isn't going to magically, yes, finish the behavior for them. They have to put the effort in to move the object. So we have to make sure that wherever we're putting it, it's not coming closer to them if we can avoid it. Now, you may also have situations where your dog is not really responding to the target. That's okay. If they don't touch it within about 3 seconds, just pick it up and represent. I'm going to take it away, and I'm going to represent over here. And then I'm going to take it away, and I'm going to represent over here. Yes, good job. So what I'm doing is I'm teaching him that it changes, and if you don't act quickly, you're going to miss your opportunity to get a treat. So we build it impulsion by making it a fun and unpredictable game. Oh, too bad it wasn't just sniffing it. I know it's tough. Oh, ready? Yes, good job. Good touch. Well done. Ready? So this is totally new for him. Yes, you're seeing it from the early stages of, I don't know this object, what is it, what am I supposed to do with it, to starting to understand the concept, and this does take time. Oh, you missed it, you walked right past it, you weren't even looking. What are you supposed to do? Getting frustrated. So this time I'm starting to move it a little further away from me, so he's got to learn to come away from the TREATs that I have in my lap and pursue the object. Where is it? Yes, good job. Well done. And because your dog is learning this, they're just learning it for the first time. It's not uncommon that they're going to have moments at which they're not really responding because they're thinking, they're processing, and they're problem solving. So just like when you learn a new skill, like how to solve a new math problem, it's not something that you can immediately do in your head and come up with the answer in 2 seconds. It's something that we have to start to give the dogs flexibility to learn, to make mistakes, and to process what is the right answer and what isn't. So we have to make sure that we're harboring an environment that is very learner friendly, that it's motivating and engaging, so that your dog wants to learn to perform these tasks, because these tasks innately for our dogs are not going to be motivating, they're not natural. So unless they get something out of the interaction, they're not going to be motivated to perform them for us. We have to cultivate that relationship in order to make sure that these assistive behaviors are something that the dog wants to engage in so that they have a better performance success. So now we're going to take this measuring cup and we're going to start to introduce the skill of shutting a door. Now, although it's a little bit premature to start to introduce translating to another object, I want to give you a bit of a taste of how that would look. So I've taken my measuring cup and I've actually taped it to the front of this open drawer. Yes, good boy. I love that you're investigating that drawer. So it's important to remember that dogs naturally are not going to gravitate towards the table. It's a boring object, it doesn't do anything for them. So we want to encourage any interaction with the object. So I have the measuring cup taped to it in such a way that there's an opening here, and that creates a lovely little pocket that I can actually put a treat into to encourage him to come and interact. So I'm going to start adding the verbal cue for what I'd like him to do by saying close, and I'm going to put a treat into his little pocket, and it's encouraging him to come up and investigate what's happening over here. Close. And he's got to really kind of dig into that measuring cup. Good boy. You saw him kind of push his nose in there. Close. To get that treat out. So he's pushing with more force. Close. Yes. So that time I actually didn't put a treat in. I just pointed to it. I said close. Yes. And he pushed his nose. So I went to get a treat. I need to move these a little closer. Close. Yes. Good job. So that time he actually missed the measuring cup, but I used yes because he touched the drawer. Yes, good job. Here you go. And I'm going to start to let him know that anything that you touch over here with your nose works. Close. Yes, good job. I'm going to grab a treat and I'm just feeding it to him for that. Good job. Ready? Close. Yes, good job. It works over there too. And now he's looking in the drawer. He's more interested in what's happening over here. So I'm not rewarding him for looking in the drawer. I'm really focused on this outside edge. Close. Good. Yes. So he's not at a point where he's pushing yet, but I do think we'll get there as I start to incorporate this idea. So ready? Close. Good. That time he added a little bit of force. He kind of was in a weird position. Hi. What's going on? Something out there? Ready? Close. Yes! Good job! So because he was standing over it in such a way, he pushed his nose into it just to kind of get his nose where it needed to be, and it happened to push the door shut. So I'm going to give him a couple extra treats for that because that was really awesome. And I want him to know that that was really cool. It wasn't intended. I didn't think he'd get to that point yet, but he's starting to learn it. Ready? Close. Oh, good. He pushed the edge really hard, but it actually got stuck. So I'm just going to direct him in the middle a little bit. Close. Oops, what happened? Now remember, sometimes they make mistakes. Sometimes they're just thinking and processing, or they tried something and it didn't happen the way they thought. So it's okay. He made a little mistake there. I'm just gonna re-cue. Ready? Over here, close. Oh, we gotta have a big stress stretch, huh? Because it didn't work out the way you thought it was gonna. Right here, look at me. That's where my hand is closed. Oh, nice job, yes, well done. Here you go, lots of treats. So I'm giving him 3 for that. where they do something extra special, so we give them something extra special, just to help really reinforce that. That's not for you. Thanks anyway. Can you come over here? Please, over here. Thank you. I'm going to just open the drawer again. I'm going to give him another cue. Close. Oops. Yay! Good job! Well done. Now, each time that he gets successful at that, I'm not always going to give him a huge jackpot. We want that to be somewhat like a slot machine. He doesn't know which time, so I just give him 2 that time. Ready? Close. Yes! Good job. So he's really starting to understand what the end goal is. Now, he is a dog that has worked through similar behaviors before. So for him, his learning process is going to be a little bit faster and a little more exaggerated than a dog that's just getting started. But this is essentially what the process will look like. Close. That's cute. Oh, I get it, almost did it. So each time he reaches a benchmark, I'm not lowering my criteria. Yes, good job. Since he's shown me he can close it at least 3 times, I'm not accepting anything less than that anymore to get a treat. Ready? Close. And I'm just gonna wait. Oops, that wasn't it. Sorry. How do you help me? That's my foot, that's not the drawer. Nice try. Close. That's my foot again. That's not what I was looking for. Thank you, though. It was this one. Oh, you bumped your head. Yes, thank you. Good job. And I'm going to do it just once more, just to make sure he's really understood this. Ready? Hey, are you frustrated? Close. Yes, good job. So he's really got it. We give him a couple more. And we always want to end on a successful note. So if your dog is doing really well, don't push it too far and frustrate them. Let them end on that so that they can sleep on it, really encode that memory, and bring it to your next training session. I'm just going to turn the optimization off so everything is very clear. There we go. So as you can see throughout that process, it should be really engaging and fun, and it can be relatively easy to teach some of these assistance skills. So that whole process took about 12 minutes from start to finish, and you could see at the end he was able to do it successfully and confidently, and it was fun and engaging. So we have to let go of a couple of predispositions. The first of which is that your dog must be perfect. You don't have to have a perfect dog to teach these skills. Or that your dog is going to go everywhere with you just because they've learned a couple of assistance behaviors. Learning a couple of these things are not going to fix some of the obedience or manners problems that they might have. So it doesn't turn them into a service dog, but that doesn't mean that you can't benefit from some of these tasks. Or that you have to have the intention of making your dog a service dog in order to teach these behaviors. You can just teach your dog to close doors or pick things up for you just because it's fun also. Or that your dog is too old, or too naughty, or any other preconceived notions about what's required for your pet to learn something new. And it's also good for your dog to go through this process and to learn these things for you. It provides enrichment where their environment is suddenly more engaging. They're learning to do more things and it's fun. It's great bonding time to build your relationship and have your dog paying more attention to you and your needs as well. It increases their activity because there might be certain situations, maybe like folding laundry, and you've dropped a sock on the ground and you want to ask your dog to pick that up for you, where maybe they would be laying on a bed otherwise, and now they're actively engaging with you instead. So we're increasing their activity within the home as well, which is going to decrease boredom and associated behaviors that we don't want, like attention seeking or barking or pacing around. Keeping them more active is going to make them tired, which is helpful. For an older dog, lifelong learning maintains cognitive health and can actually help to stave off canine cognitive dysfunction later in life. So your dog is never too old to learn something new. And learning desirable behaviors helps to extinguish undesirable ones because we're giving the dog so many options that are appropriate and that are fun to engage in that they actually start to extinguish and forget about the behaviors that we don't like. So to get started with all this and to start to work with your own dogs at home, we actually want to work with an accredited trainer. So the reason that I bring that up is that there's no regulation in the dog training industry. Anybody can call themselves a dog trainer, regardless of education or experience or certification. And so we want to look at trainers that are certified by governing organizations. But there's a caveat to that as well. There are a lot of organizations out there where you can pay $25 and become a certified dog trainer. So we want to look at each organization, what their requirements are. What are their testing requirements? Do they have experience hours that you have to gain before you can take the test? Do they require continuing education units to ensure that you're getting the most up-to-date information year to year? Do they have a humane practice policy that they enforce with their trainers? There are a lot of factors to look at. So we want to give you a couple of tips today that will help you to weed out trainers that may not be regulated or may not be using the most up-to-date methods. Some red flags to look for are trainers that utilize words like dominance, submission, pack leader, and alpha. We actually don't utilize any of those terms in modern dog training. A lot of them are really widely misused. We want to avoid using anything like a pinch or a prong collar, a choke collar, which can be made out of chain or rope and slips around the dog's neck and tightens indefinitely, or electronic collars, and that can include collars that emit sound, vibration, shock, citronella, etc. With governing organizations that have a humane policy, we are not permitted to use these as a first line of behavior modification. Additionally, we want to focus not on punishing unwanted behaviors, but teaching desirable ones to make sure that the dogs really understand what it is that we're asking of them before anything else. So some things to look for when you're looking for an accredited trainer are a trainer that uses positive reinforcement. That's going to be the number one thing that indicates that they are up to date on current humane and science-based methodology. They should have a philosophy that is force, pain, and fear-free, or at the very least, attempts to minimize the aversion to your dog as much as possible. We want to make sure that the process of learning is a really pleasant one for your dog. And they will probably use terms like operant conditioning, classical conditioning, learning theory, reward, or reinforcement. Those are going to be some really good signs that the trainer is up to date on science. And they are going to need to be able to create a training plan for you. So they have to have some experience in teaching assistance and support behaviors, because we want to look at a few factors. We want to be really clear about what your experience is, because much of the behaviors that we teach are really customized to the experience that you're having and the ways in which we believe the dog could help and assist you. So there's no standard way of teaching these assistance behaviors. We get really creative throughout the process, and we want it to be really tailored to you and to your pet. We want to know how old your pet is, what their temperament is like, what their learning style is, what do they like as a reinforcer, how can we engage them in the learning process, and how can we make sure that we're making learning as effective and efficient as possible. And we want to customize all of these elements so that it works well for you effectively and efficiently. So how can I help? Well, I actually provide virtual dog training. I work with people all over the US and sometimes out of the US. So I do live video sessions via Zoom, just like we're doing today. Typically that involves demonstrations, just like I've shown you, and also live practice where I can provide feedback in real time and really watch you working with your pet. And we really focus on customized training plans and providing as much resources as possible to make sure that you're successful with this at your pace. So whatever that pace might be, we have frequent check-ins, we provide lots of resources like the videos, reading materials, worksheets, and a lot more. So all of that can actually be found at my website, which is www.simplyanimaltraining.com. And I've also created a promo code that I'd love to supply you all with today to make sure that this is something that is really accessible for anyone who's interested. So I'm offering 50% off the first lesson with code PMD Alliance so that you can try it out and see if it's something that'll work for you. Now that we've gotten through all that content, I'd love to open it back up for discussion. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera back on. Let's see. Oh, good. Can you all see me again? Okay, excellent. Let's get you guys unmuted and then let's talk.
Who has a question? Go ahead and unmute yourself and let's grill Sarah. I'm so excited to hear what you guys want to learn from her. Okay, well, everyone gets their stage fright or has their question sink in.
I think Deborah has a question. Deborah, you could speak. You're unmuted.
Okay. My husband's had Parkinson's disease way over 20 years. We live in Virginia, and our dog Beamer, he's a wire fox terrier. He kind of trained himself years ago to bark for me if Bill fell, or if he was in the shower and the water stopped running, Beamer would bark to let me know that Bill was ready for me. And that was really neat. Unfortunately, he can't hear much anymore. He's 14 and his hearing's real bad, so he doesn't do that anymore. But there's an organization in Virginia called Service Dogs of Virginia, and I've been tempted to apply. A couple years ago, somebody who had Parkinson's did get one from them. We go to their annual open house, and it was interesting. The dog stopped and smelled Bill before it went into the center to do a demonstration. And now I'm thinking, do I apply for one? Because it does take like 2 years to get it. And they don't make you pay for it. They do it donations. But anyhow, I'm just rambling. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So I would definitely encourage you to go through the application process, especially if they don't charge you for it. There's no harm in doing that if you're willing to bring another dog into your home. Absolutely. That said, it sounds like given the dog's age and the health issues that they're going through, it's unlikely that we'd be able to really recover those behaviors that they had learned in the past. That said, we could try. There are definitely ways that we can create spontaneous recovery of behaviors that were previously learned by starting to institute positive reinforcement and start to get the dog engaging in them again in a motivating way. So it is something that is doable to try, but there are of course no guarantees. So I would definitely, if you're looking for something really reliable and you want to make sure you have that resource, definitely apply for the service dog. I think that's a good thing to have in your back pocket.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. I do see a question in the chat here that must have come during the presentation that says, why do you throw the treat/reward on the floor rather than giving it to the dog from your hand? That's a really good question. So there are a couple of reasons why I chose to do that. The first of which is that throwing the treat gets the dog down, sniffing, and resetting. So when they look back up, they notice the target again. But it's not necessary. You can feed out of your hand and just put the target back down. But for me, it just comes kind of unconsciously from my history as a trainer, is just trying to be strategic with everything that I'm doing. I also don't imagine that in some situations, if the dog isn't coming up to you, that it would be easy to bend over and give the dog a treat. So tossing on the floor is absolutely acceptable as well.
I think, Irene, did you have a question? I saw you unmuted yourself.
I was wondering, so what other kinds of things could we possibly teach a little dog?
That's a great question. There are a lot of things we could teach a little dog. They can't provide necessarily the mobility support, so they wouldn't be able to brace you, but they can bring things to you. So if you can't necessarily use them to get up and get the remote, you can still ask them to retrieve the remote, bring it to you, or to, if they can, if they're good jumpers, or if we can put up like doggy stairs, we're able to teach them to do lights on and off, just like anything else. They can learn to open and close doors depending on the weight of the door. So if it's like a big, heavy sliding door, that's going to be tough, but an internal door could be easy. They can learn just as much as we can. It's just a matter of making sure that we make the adaptations that they need in order to successfully perform the behavior. It's a really great question. Is there something that you could envision being helpful from a service dog, or something that you would be curious about trying? Because we can always create behaviors.
Well, I guess picking something up that got dropped.
Yeah, that's a great one. That's one that I've actually taught my dog as well. I have some arthritis. And so I have days where I just can't imagine reaching down and I drop something on the floor and I'm annoyed about it and I'm flustered and I don't want to ask for help around my house. And so I look at my dog and I say, could you get that for me? And he'll come over and pick it up. So it is nice to sometimes be able to ask the dog for help when you don't want to ask somebody else in the house. You're just having a bad day and it's frustrating. So that would be a great one to start with.
In your PowerPoint too, one of the things, one of the bullet points was just anxiety relief company. I forget what the wording was.
Yeah.
That seems, is that something that you would train? Wouldn't a dog just do that by naturally being your little pal? What would you train to foster that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So there are hundreds of behaviors for anxiety support. It all depends on the situations. One of the common ones is actually deep pressure therapy. So deep pressure therapy is when you're stressed out and you have that sort of just uncontrollable feeling of shakiness and anxiety and stress. Deep pressure therapy actually helps to calm the peripheral nervous system and get you back in control, bring you more centered, and help almost create biofeedback to help you slow your breathing and slow your heart rate. So deep pressure therapy is where the dog is trained to get up into your lap or onto your body and actually lay on you and slow their breathing and kind of help you engage with them. They also can be taught interruption behaviors. So if anyone experiences panic, and maybe they have some signs that they're starting to come on to a panic, something like increased respiration or fidgeting, the dog can come up and do behaviors like licking your hand to get your mind on something else so that you're able to kind of interrupt that cycle before it worsens or deepens. They can also be taught to give you space from other people, especially right now during COVID-19. That's a big one for me. I get really anxious if somebody's not socially distancing properly. And so teaching the dog to get in between you and sit kind of at the end of their leash and provide a barrier where somebody can't get closer to you can be really helpful as well. Or teaching them to act like they need to go to the bathroom really badly and get you out of social situations if you're uncomfortable in them. There are so many options.
That's great. You're amazing. I never would have thought of these things. Let's see. Danielle put, okay, I have two. Let's start with, I have to start with Rambo and then we'll go to Captain Carl. Go ahead, Rambo. I hope that's your real name.
That is our name.
Love it.
Thank you. We have a big German Shepherd, and I took her through some training, so I know she can learn things. And she's very sensitive. My husband's had Parkinson's for 25 years, and he occasionally falls. He'll go outside and go on the sidewalk or whatever and fall. Should we try and teach her to bark, or just to retrieve his phone?
Those are great questions.
Can you wrap a phone with something so that a big dog can pick up a phone like that?
That is a wonderful question. Yeah, there are a lot of options for ways that we can work that situation. Some motion assistance dogs and stability dogs have been taught to catch people when they do fall. So for example, people with epilepsy who don't know that a seizure is coming on, if they fall suddenly, we want to make sure that their heads are protected. So that is definitely an option. Getting help, there are a few different ways that we can teach the dog to do that. We can teach them to pull on a strap that's attached to the phone to get it out of the pocket. And press on it or whatever they need to do. I know there are emergency button necklaces and things that we can train the dogs to press as well. Barking, definitely to get help, or even how to find their way home and let you know that something's happened outside and guide you back to that too. So there are many ways to work that. I love the creativity that you asked about how to attach something to the phone. Definitely something that can be worked with. Really, the way that I work with this is looking at the experience of each person, how these instances come about. What are your fears about it? What do you think might be reassuring or helpful? And how can we teach the dog to work within those parameters? So the options are really limitless.
Okay. When she was a puppy and he fell right in the living room, she crawled up on his back and just kind of covered him and just stayed there. So
she sounds like she is a perfect fit.
She is like a service dog. Yeah. So I'd love to learn more. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. I would love to meet her someday and get to help with that. That would be amazing. She sounds wonderful.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Carl, did you have a question?
I have just a comment. I just acquired 2 dogs. I've only had them for a week, and they're brother and sister, Schnauzer, who's crossbred. And I was walking. They're not very leash trained yet. I was walking the male the other night, and the leash was hit my leg, and then a car came by and spooked the dog, and it caused the dog to jerk out in front of me, and I lost my balance and fell on the sidewalk. But it was interesting that as I laid there trying to get up, I was all alone. The dog came and laid by me, laid by my legs, and it made me feel good, to think that it would do that. And he could have ran away. But he laid by me, and I can tell he has a sense of companionship, and it was really cool. And so I'm anxious to teach him and work with him.
Definitely. I think that's such a good point that so many of us have a connection with our dogs, and we have a relationship with our dogs that is already special and unique. And so the idea of getting a dog that we don't have a connection with from an organization, sometimes that can be daunting too. And instead, building off of that foundation that you already have and helping to just encourage those behaviors that the dog seems to naturally be exhibiting can be a much faster process for sure.
And that kind of brings me maybe to a follow-up question. So I know in my friends and family, I know 2 people who have adopted dogs since COVID started. What can you tell us? I think some people might hear Carl's story and be like, oh, that sounds maybe why I wouldn't want to try to train a dog or get a new dog. Can you kind of talk to us about maybe if we don't have a dog and are considering, bringing a new family member?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the biggest things to look at is what sort of assistance you can have with the dog when you do get them home, because there are a lot of things that they are not going to know automatically. So if you're worried about taking them for a walk, can you work with a walker that can walk them for the first few weeks while you're doing some training with them to help them get to the point of being safe to walk? Or can the shelter that you're working with actually provide that service as well? There are a lot of shelters that do employ trainers and that would be willing to help also. Really, when it comes to adopting a dog, it's all about looking at what you want, making sure the dog is the right fit. So I hate to provide generalized advice because there are so many variations. Like my own dogs that I've adopted all have behavioral issues because that's what I look for in a dog. And so it really depends on what it is that you want and how we can help you to navigate that. I know that there are a lot of trainers that provide pre-adoption consults. So they'll work with a shelter and they'll help evaluate dogs to make sure you're getting the right fit too.
Great. There was a question in the chat from Danielle. So she has a service dog, and then she has a non-service dog that's maybe getting some bad behaviors, leaking some bad behaviors. And Julie commented on some advice. So I don't know if you were able to see those, and if you could kind of add your your take on those as well.
Yeah, definitely. If you're noticing a problem with your dog, we definitely want to address that before anything else happens, because dogs are social animals and they do perform mimicry. And so they start to learn, you know, what the other dogs are doing in the household. It helps them to feel sort of included and part of the family as well. So it's not uncommon that they can pick up bad habits if the other dogs are doing them too. So what we want to do with that is really try to address what's causing it. Why are they picking up those habits? Why are they motivated to do those behaviors? So for example, I think the behavior in question is jumping, which I'm imagining is jumping up on people, which is a pretty common one. So when dogs go to greet one another, they usually greet face to face, and we just happen to have our faces way up here. And so most dogs jump not because they're trying to be naughty, but because they are trying to greet you. So that's a pretty common one that the dogs learn through social learning. They see the other dogs getting attention and greeting you that way, and they go, oh, this is how I'm supposed to interact with a human. That makes sense. And so we want to teach them that human culture is very different than dog culture. And we want to make sure that all the dogs in the house understand that, so that they can also have the benefit of learning that the standard of practice is a universal rule for all of the dogs. So we want to make sure that there is a sense of fairness, and we're not allowing one behavior with one dog and not with the other as well, because they will pick up on that. So definitely, I think the suggestion of basic obedience and manners is a great place to start, but that can be taught in conjunction with any of these behaviors too. There are so many things that overlap in these concepts. Oh, Danielle, great. Thank you. I would be happy to help you with that. Definitely. It's something that I see all the time.
Nice. So let's see. Let me see if we missed another one. Okay, so this is a question specific to Parkinson's. So on my bad days, my voice goes really quiet. I worry about vocal commands. How can I train my dog if my dog can't even understand what I'm saying?
Dogs are nonverbal. They can't understand what we're saying anyway. So they only learn to understand what we're saying because we start to associate verbal cues with behaviors. But that's a very human concept, this idea of talking to our dogs. So when I'm training a dog that I've never met before, I'm actually completely silent. I don't do anything. I use my reinforcement. I use my body language if I need to, but mostly I am just interacting in a way of teaching them that I provide reinforcement when you do this, and that's how they understand. So you don't need your voice to train a dog. You don't even ideally need hand signals. What we do when we're teaching is we teach them context. If I fall, go get help. So the cue is you're laying on the ground. It's not you saying, go get help, because that doesn't do anything for anybody. So that is a really great question, but it's definitely something that we can work around, and I do it all the time.
Great. I think, Roger, did you have a question? And then we'll go to Carl. Oh, you're muted. You're muted, Roger, so we can't hear you. And I don't want to click unmute, because that's when you'll click unmute, and then it'll be like when you lock and unlock the car door at the same time. There, now we got it.
Okay. I've got several questions. Is there a particular breed to stay away from? I've got Parkinson's and DBS, and then I had a stroke on my full right side, so I'm having to learn to walk, and then stroke is fighting Parkinson's. And I'm 190 pounds. I'm thinking like a golden. Is there dogs I should think about or dogs I should avoid?
That is a really great question. As far as dogs that you should avoid, I think any dog is capable of helping, but it depends on what you're looking for. So a golden retriever is definitely a pretty standard service dog. They're really great. If you're looking for something like more mobility support, a dog that would be able to hold you up and walk with you and provide that support so that you could walk for longer, for example, we typically look at Great Danes for that, because they are larger and they're able to withstand more weight. But of course, it's about finding the dog that's going to be comfortable with that too, because because some dogs are not comfortable with tactile stimulation. So it definitely depends on the behaviors that you're looking for, but I think a golden's a great option. Anything larger than probably 60 or 80 pounds, we want some pretty big dogs.
Yeah.
Right. Are you going to leave how we can get a hold of you or send you more questions or email?
Absolutely. And I will make sure that anyone who wants them gets these slides as well, and copies of those tutorials. So absolutely.
Wonderful.
Great, thanks. So I think, Carl, you had another question. If you want to go ahead, I unmuted you.
Okay. I just have a comment regarding the dog hearing words, you know, that is nonverbal. So if your dog, you call it by a name, how does it know? Is it what sign is it looking for that when you call it its name? If it doesn't understand.
That is a fabulous question. So naturally, dogs are nonverbal, but they can learn to identify names and identify words, but they have to learn that through a process. So usually it's that we address them by their name over and over and over, and they eventually start to go, okay, I hear that all the time. That must mean something. So they can learn it, but they don't have to. We can also call dogs to us using hand signals, using whistles, using, actually have a deaf dog that I've worked with where we attached a vibrating collar that we taught as a recall because she couldn't hear anything else. So it just gently vibrates and lets her know that we're calling her. She comes right back. So there are so many ways that we can communicate with them.
Yeah, I can't whistle very well. So what would be a good way to communicate with her to get her attention? Just whistle as well as you can.
That's an option. They have devices that you can push a button and it makes a really loud noise too, that we can also teach them as the cue for comeback. There are definitely a lot of different pieces on the market that we could find one that works or find something that is easy to maneuver and use.
Thank you.
Of course. That's a great question.
And I think we're coming up at the end. So I don't know if this is a hard question or an easy question, but Julie was asking, and maybe this is a good kind of like takeaway action item that people can go and start. You showed the video of the nose training, and Julie was asking about teaching retrieve behaviors.
Yeah, so teaching retrieve behaviors is a little bit more complex than the nose targeting because there are a few elements to it. So when we think about retrieving, there's actually a few skills. One is to grab an object with their mouth. The other is to hold that object. And then the last part is to actually release that object and then follow that by releasing that in the right location. So it's not just pick up the object, hold it, and then drop it on the floor. It's pick up the object, hold it, bring it over to me, and put it in my hand. And so we have to actually teach each of those elements individually. Some dogs have more of a predisposition for picking things up. They like to carry things, but maybe they don't like to give things back quite so much. So we have to look at each individual dog and see what they are good at and start to focus on the elements that they're not so good at and then put it all together.
Very good. And Rebecca taught her cat how to retrieve. Yeah, we've been talking about dogs, but we should acknowledge the other half, right? Our feline kitty friends. So, one last question. To clarify, on Zoom, do you teach the dogs on Zoom or do you teach the humans to teach the dogs?
That's a good question. So typically I teach the humans to teach the dogs because we want you to be able to navigate the situations and work through them effectively. We want your dog to listen to you. So it's really about kind of teaching you to be your dog's trainer so that you can have that relationship with them. That said, I have actually done sessions with remote treat delivery systems like Furbo or Pet Cube Bites, if you've ever seen those. They have like a camera and they shoot treats out when you click them. And so I do have a couple clients with dogs that have separation anxiety. We actually do the training where the client isn't there and we use that machine. So there are options for it. But yes, ideally, I like the clients to do the learning and be able to engage with their pets for sure. That's a great question. That is one I didn't expect. So well done.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for your great questions and for tuning in. I know I've heard, as we've been having programs and talking to people, I think overwhelmingly people are, lonely and having a hard time being stuck at home and not knowing how long it's going to end. So I don't know, for me, this timing, was perfect. And maybe it's, if we can't have human interaction, maybe our animal friends interaction can start to take the part of, take some of the edge off what we're missing from socializing with our own species. So, well, thank you again. Any final words to wrap up, to put a bow on it, Sarah?
It was so nice to meet you all. Thank you for the wonderful questions. And I do hope you guys reach out, even if you're not necessarily interested in training or you just want to show me your dogs. Like she said, I think we're all feeling a little bit isolated, and I would love to talk dogs and dog behavior with you. This is something I'm really passionate about. So thank you for joining us today.
Very good. All right. Well, now we're going to wave out. And if you have your pet with you and you have trained your pet to also wave, it's the double wave out. But bye. Oh, look at that sleepy pup. Bye, everyone. So good to see you. Thank you. Have a great evening, everyone.
There's
Thank you all.
There's Oki. I'm trying to